Hello and welcome to this new episode of the JMDR Medical Device Expert Podcast, hosted by the Journal of Medical Device Regulation. My name is Maria. I will be your host for today's session. Today we are tackling clinical and regulatory challenges for medical device manufacturers under the EU MDR, and I'm already looking forward to learning a lot on this very complex topic from today's session. I'm thrilled to welcome today's guest speakers, Michaela Dimitriou and Marius Wojtok from the company MedClinical. They are joining us from Paris and from Aachen in Germany. MedClinical is a CRO for devices and IVDs and is offering clinical operations and medical writing services for medical device manufacturers. It's absolutely lovely to have you here with us, Michaela and Marius. Thank you for joining us. By way of introduction, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your current role in the medical device industry? Michaela first, if you like.
Yes, thank you, Maria. It's a pleasure to meet you today. My name is Michaela Dimitriou. I'm Executive VP of MedClinical. By training, I have a PhD in medical oncology and biochemistry. Now it's more than 25 years I'm working with drugs and medical device and diagnostic. It will be a pleasure to answer your question later on.
Yes, hello, my name is Marius Wojtok. Thank you very much for having us today. Shortly for my background, I studied biology and then biomedical engineering. And after my PhD, I started as a medical writer back in 2019. And I'm right now the medical writer director at MedClinical. And I'm responsible for all documents and questions regarding the clinical evaluation and PMCF.
Okay, great, thank you. So let's get started. Subscribers to the Journal of Medical Device Regulation were invited to send us their questions about clinical matters with regard to medical devices. And you won't be surprised to hear that we received lots of questions. We will try to get through as many as possible in the time we have available today. So here comes the first question, which goes right to the heart of the matter. I think Michaela will want to answer this one.
Thank you. So what are the key changes in relation to running these clinical trials? Yes, it's a nice question. Even if the EU MDR is applicable since May 2021, it has already impacted how clinical trials are conducted across the EU. And the regulatory context evolves and had an impact on the notified body certified under MDR, then cascaded on the manufacturers too. And yes, you know, the MDR reinforced the PMCF process for the manufacturer, devoting Part B of the Annex 14 to it and providing a set of requirements for developing a plan necessary to implement PMCF. So this new regulation involves the frequency increase of clinical evaluation by soliciting the sites, hospital, clinics which used to deal with drug clinical trials. More details about definition and expectations for clinical evaluating, bringing to a discussion with manufacturers to support them on clinical trial submission, setup, monitoring, and site investigation regulation. So if it's something we really need to focus on, it's that now with new regulation, data collected for, it's not only for safety, but also for performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next question. Is there a centralized source of information on key requirements for registration of clinical trials for medical devices in the EU member states, Michaela?
Yes, sure. The ODAMED is the European database on medical devices regulation in Europe. And you have a regulation 2017-745 and the in vitro diagnostics medical device, it's 2017-746. This database has been created, but it's not fully operational. We have, it was added also details on question and answer regarding the clinical investigation part. It's on the MDCG 2021-6. For a medical device. And now clinical trials are registered for each country by their national competent authority. So it's easier for manufacturer to submit in their own country and to follow their regulation. You know that at the European level, you have 6 modules: the actor registration, the unique device identification, we call it UDI, and the device registration. So if you register once in one country in Europe, you have the same device, unique device identification all around Europe. Notified body and certificate. So you can choose one of the 20 can now approve you under MDR. Before it was several under MDD, it was more than 100, but now we need to be trained also and to be qualified. Then you have a clinical investigation and performance study. You have a vigilance, which is applicable for everybody. So material vigilance, we call it, and also market surveillance.
And sorry, when you say the database is not fully operational, what do you mean by that?
So one day it will be possible, as for drugs, to do an European registration, okay, for a trial, in place to do it country by country. So now what we are doing query spoken by country and using the specific of that country, okay? Mm-hmm. It's not the European level, which is at the high level. You have first to respect what's on the country level.
Mm-hmm. And are all the 6 modules operative already?
This one, it's already there. So the UDI, unique device identification, it's something everybody is doing, and device registration. The notified body, if you are approved, I don't know, by DECRA, okay, this is applicable for all Europe, okay. Mm-hmm. If you are by GEMED, it's the same story, or others, okay. So it's one, it's applicable for all Europe. So you can go to any of them. Generally, manufacturers are looking to the one where they submitted the first time, and also availability of these groups, because we have like more than 300,000 medical devices who need to be certified under MDR. So actually, there are a lot of discussion about these points. Last week in France, they decided to all the manufacturers to do a common letter at the European level to announce that it will be very hard to be certified under MDR for all the products by 2024, and they requested some extra time. So yeah, it's it's not evident. Also, you have the vigilance, so we call it the material vigilance. It's common to all Europe, and even I think that it's linked to all the material vigilance around the world. So yes, what I just said for France, now France requested to Germany if they want to join to this European letter to request extra time. It's very difficult for a manufacturer to do in such a short time, even if they are prepared from 2080, but to collect performance on product, it's not easy. So we'll discuss about this in details later on.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question for the both of you. What is the definition of a PMCF study, as the MDR does not provide a definition really?
So yes, so the PMCF study is a specific activity for PMCF. So we'll come later to the PMCF in more detail, as PMCF is also a part of the post-market surveillance. And these studies are used to really answer specific question you have for your device concerning clinical safety or clinical performance. And everything is in accordance, with the approved labeling device. So this means that this is like the specific question is in the intended purpose of your device, for example, or indications. So they need to be conducted in compliance with the ISO 14055, which is the clinical investigation of medical devices for human subjects, good clinical practice. And here's the focus on the quality procedures, monitoring the people, and the document management.
Yes, thanks, Marius, for giving all these details. So, of course, for this kind of trials, for this post-market clinical follow-up studies, for sure we have to follow the good clinical practice as for pre and post-market clinical investigation. But today, the most difficult part is that to look at all the overall benefits and risk of a device for marketing authorization. And some uncertainties may remain. So we need to collect additional clinical data on a day-to-day life of a product or a medical device. So we are looking at the residual risk, which are identified, or if there is a need for clarification of long-term clinical performance that may impact the benefit-risk ratio of a device. So as an example, we may look at catheters we maintain on place, or Porta 4, you know, for passing chemotherapy. So you maintain them on place during several months. So you need to look long term. Sometimes for catheter or for pacemaker, you come back 2-3 times after the surgery and see your doctor, and then you go back to the private place. So we lose information on long-term follow-up. So it's one of the kind of thing we need to collect and to have data on clinical performance. So this kind of thing will impact perhaps the benefit-risk ratio of a device. Also, of course, we may indicate, we look and address the emerging concern resulting from this post-marketing adverse event trends. Lucky for this for a lot of products, it's very small, but the problem when you have very few adverse events, this means that you need to collect more data. As an example, if you have one adverse event every 10,000 patients, we need to work closely with statisticians to have an idea how we look at that and how we can collect data. Sure, we can look via the literature, also look at signals from adverse events reports, and of course, having an active surveillance program, having the medical affairs teams of each manufacturer discussing with the key opinion, yes, I think with the investigator, the users, and to collect the data, and then to perform some studies looking more in details. So what kind of PMCF studies we have? We have retrospective studies and prospective studies. So what we can find on retrospective studies, it's of course non-interventional. The medical device is prescribed in the usual way in accordance with its marketing authorization and instruction for use. We have data available, the existing data in the patient medical files of the intended population or in a data register, and a short time study. Due to the set of facilities and data collection, study duration and study cost are reduced because you have already the data on the patient file in the hospital. Then the other kind of study, it's the prospective one. So the prospective one, it's observational studies, observation of the use of a medical device on the safety and the performance after, of course, the CE mark, without risk or minimal risk and constraints. So we build the study and we can collect the data, you know, like a normal trial. It's you build your protocol and you are sure you are collecting the level of information you may need. Because as you know, as an example, in some hospital before they have logistics, and sometimes they perform some exam and some not. But with a prospective trial, you oblige them to perform all the exam you may need. It's and they have to follow it. On retrospective, it's not the case. You collect the data they done with their normal, their normal logistics. So with prospective, you may collect more data if needed. And of course, it's real-time data used by the, observe the medical device used by health professional. And this helps us to update and to compare the logistic from one hospital to another.
Thank you. Another one for you, Michaela.
Okay.
Are there any EU form templates, for example, for application, notification, financial disclosure, clinical research agreement, and so on? And where can we find them?
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, there are no EU form template. The EU regulation provides guidelines, not templates. Yes, you can find more specific country guidance on National Health Authorities websites. As I said at the beginning, actually, as we have a strong experience with medicine regulation, and those regulations are picky, we built our template according to medicine requirement to get a high level of quality. In all cases, it's what I've done on my previous life as manufacturer. We were a class 3. So what we've done, it's we are looking at the recommendation already in 2018 to pass to MDR in 2021, and we try to be as picky as possible. So each manufacturer is preparing his own template, of course, with the help of local guidance. So just as an example, if you are in France, for regulatory file submission to competent authority, we are going to a global ethics committee and national health authorities. So each country is providing their, they are providing the adequate regulation you need to follow. And if you are doing a prospective trial, you need to prepare the informed consent, respecting the local law. What you can use, you can make, as an example, for an informed consent, you have some rules, you have some guidance at the European level, and then you adapt them to a local requirement. You have one point, one of I can say, one of the guidance you have, it's on the template. It's the one for the material vigilance and pharmacovigilance in case you are a combination of medical device and drug. And this you have to follow. You have no choice. This is at the European level. Then also you have a SIOMS. SIOMS, it's the Council for International Organization of Medical Sciences. And they provide several documents as a cumulative glossary, where you can find all the terms and definition which can help you to adapt at the European level. I put here the link, like that you can download it if you need.
So that's disappointing. No templates.
For safety, it's a matter of vigilance. It's the most important, okay?
Yeah.
For informed consent, you have guidelines, but have a look, you know, even for contracts with doctors, you need to adapt to the local law. You may have big lines, you have not to forget also the GRPD and other things, but it's difficult. We are more than 25 countries working all together, so it's we try to compile everything. So I think it's very important that already today we have a material vigilance. It's very important. It's several years, and the unique number for a medical device or a diagnostic. This is very important. Like that, if you starting the submission, I don't know, with DECRA, if at the next follow-up you go with GMED, okay, in this case they can find all the information, okay, and you know, this is a big progress in all cases. Like that, yeah. And the quality from each notified body, it's the same, you know. So it's the reason why I'm telling you, it's like when we started in 2021 for the MDR, it was only 7 notified body approved, and now we are at more than 20, you know, which is good. Yeah. Which is good. So it takes time. So it explains also the difficulty for manufacturer to group them in just in 7 with 7 notified body. Now you have 20 and like that. So, and all of them are at the same level, which is quite important. You cannot say I'm going to that country because it's easier to pass. No, the control is the same. The auditor is the same.
Yeah. That's reassuring, yeah, in matters of safety. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the documentation, it's everywhere in English. There are some parts you can put on local language, but the whole documentation, all the PMCF plan, the CP, the CR, they are all done in English. Like that, this facilitates the review all around the world.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. The next question is if there is a database of EU-based CROs or CRO association similar to MedTech Europe, for instance, where non-EU clinical trial sponsors can find information about EU-based CROs?
Mm-hmm. Sure, you have the EUCRO, the European CRO Federation. So these groups, 387 members, CRO, and represents 25 countries. As an example, in Belgium, it's BCRO. In France, it's AFCRO. In Germany, it's BVMA. So you have several, and you have members and associate members. Like that, we are not only Europe, we can go further. So we have Ukraine, Switzerland, they are not in the common Europe, okay, if I can say. And some other partner members like Algeria, Egypt, Israel, and some other are coming. Yeah, so it's good to be there. So it's what we are trying to actually, it's to join this group.
Of course.
So what we are doing, you may know, so their aims and objective, it's of course to promote clinical research of high quality in Europe. We have common meetings where we are discussing how we can improve, as an example, the informed consent, the contracts, so of course, from a legal entity to represent the interest of CRO in the EU, promote a close relationship and mutual understanding between all the national member association and the above mentioned body, as we discussed, promote the exchange of information, develop training and educational programs, so and of course distribute information on development in clinical research, and organize international conference and meeting as MedTech Europe or MedTech France. Yeah. Okay, and I put here a link, yes.
Yes, yeah. Okay, the next question. Are the EU Clinical Trials Directive 2001/20 EC and the EU Clinical Trials Regulation 536/2014 applicable to medicines only? Do they apply to drug device combinations products at all?
Mm-hmm. So starting January 2022, we have a new regulation, the 536.2014, which is applicable for medicine. For drug and medical device combination products, they are regulated either by by 4 different ways. So you have MDR, of course, 2017 745. You have the famous Directive 2001-83 EC. You have two regulations, the Regulation 726/2004, and the one you talked earlier, the Directive 2001-20 EC has been replaced by the Regulation 536/2014. So sometimes combination products is considered as a drug or a device depending on the main action claimed. The applicable regulation depends on the defined objective, focusing either on the drug efficiency or the device performance safety. Some cases require consultation of a health authority, as described in Article 1.8 and 1.9 of the MDR. So what I recommend is, when you don't know how to manage it, and even if you know, it's good to request a meeting for an advice with a notified body. Like that, you are sure that you are performing it on the right way. It's time consuming and it's a lot of cost if you start a trial, and when you go and submit it, and you see that you miss some points on the performance or on the safety. So I recommend to request an appointment, as people are doing also with the FDA. It's very often done here in Europe, and when I was manufacturer, I've done it too. Like that, you guide your study to avoid missing points and missing claims, and you are sure on the right way to obtain registration or to maintain registration.
That makes sense. Yeah. Rather invest time before the trial than later on having to repair or to reset up the whole trial. No?
Sure. In all cases, all notified body, they have experts coming there. So it's very important to be sure that you are looking at the right on the right direction, because you can imagine if they are telling you, okay, no, we need more information on that point, and we see this with Marius and his team very often. When you don't have enough information, we know that it will be a problem to maintain your certification if you don't have the data on that point. So really to build the study on the right way.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. The next question is about advertising. What are the rules around advertising clinical trials in the EU?
Good questions. Yes, sure. So you can, as a manufacturer, you may find potential participants to your trial by advertising through organizations such as patient association, patient registries, hospital, pharmacy. But all this needs to be, of course, submitted to ethics before. You are not authorized to put advertising like that on a train or something. You know, it's not possible. You cannot do what you want. You need to follow the rules. The traditional method of print advertising, such as posters in physician office, have been replaced using digital tools. Also on the website of an hospital, you may find, I don't know, you look at clinical trials, and you can find clinical trials on the area. Also, doctors in the same hospital are linked all together, and when a patient arrives, if they need something specific, it's, I don't know, I come back to the pacemaker, but you need a pacemaker, and they will receive an alert telling them it exists a clinical trial on this area in your hospital. Do you want to present it to your patient? Look at the inclusion-exclusion criteria, and if it works, it works. If not, so this can improve the number of patients selected on a trial. Actually, you have less than 5% of patients who arrive at the hospital who participate to a trial, drug or medical device in the world. So I can give you some example. It's very few. So, but don't forget, this must be submitted to the independent ethics committee, then get approval before being applied, of course. So just in summary, advertisements should always specify the contact information for the organization conducting the clinical trial, state the disease and the purpose of a trial, list the inclusion-exclusion criteria, briefly describe the benefits of participating in the trial, like regular medical checkup, and indicate the duration of the trial. But never should not promise a favorable outcome or cure of a disease, be coercive, claim that the drug device being studied is safe and effective. So again, you can find on the EMEA Europe the link here to have all the guidelines.
Great, thank you. The next question, I think, is for Marius. The question is Annex 2 to the MDR, which concerns technical documentation, requires a PMCF plan and a PMCF evaluation report referred to in Part B of Annex 14, or a justification why a PMCF is not applicable. To what level must the justification for an absence of a PMCF be documented?
Yes, so to answer this question, I would like first to talk about PMCF in general to really understand the needs here. So as MDR Article 10.3 is about the general application of manufacturers, it says that the manufacturer shall conduct a clinical evaluation in accordance with the requirements set out in Article 61 and Annex 14, including in PMCF. So this means PMCF is first of all, is mandatory for all medical devices, even though you still have an MDD certificate. So you have to have started yet to do this. So what is PMCF? It's a continuous process to update your clinical evaluation. It's a proactive way to collect and evaluate clinical data from your device, which BSSC are marking, and it's placed on the market or put into service. Then first you start with the PMCF plan. So the PMCF plan then shall specify methods and procedures with different aims. So the first aim is to confirm the safety and performance of the device throughout the whole expected lifetime. Then next you have to identify previously unknown side effects, and you should also monitor them and also to look out for contraindications. Then the next step is also to identify and analyze emerging risk, and always to ensure that that you have a continued acceptability of the benefit-risk ratio. The last point to mention is here to identify possible systematic misuse or off-label use, which is quite commonly daily practice sometimes for devices. So then the PMCF plan also should include different methods and procedures. So on the one hand, we have the general methods. These can be clinical experience gained or feedback you got back from the users of your device, or screening the scientific literature. Then we have the specific method we just mentioned before. These could be then registry or PMCF studies. So indeed, the PMCF plan can provide a rationale why specific PMCF activities are not considered necessary right now. But they might be necessary later based on the results you get. So it doesn't mean if you don't do it now, you will never do this ever in future. Similar to the clinical evaluation, the manufacturer then needs to analyze and document all the findings of PMCF inside a PMCF evaluation report. And the summary of this is then also part of the clinical evaluation report. And of course, it's part of the technical documentation. So if you need help here to really to see how you have to do the PMCF plan or do the PMCF evaluation report. I really suggest to have a look at the MDCG guideline 2027 and 2028. Then, so if the manufacturer now chooses to justify not performing PMCF activities, so yeah, we really want to highlight the specific ones. So there's a long list now to what he has to follow, what he has to show. So first of all, you have to show that the risk management file concludes no residual risk. Then you also have to make sure that your clinical evaluation contains sufficient clinical evidence data. Also, you have to then show that there are no novel materials or principles of operation or any other significant changes to the device since the first placement on the market. Next, you also have to show that there is no high risk in terms of invasiveness, type of clinical procedure, and so on to your device. Also, you have to see that there are no unanswered questions regarding the medium long-term safety and clinical performance of your device. And there should be also no findings of any adverse events. So once you do your literature search for equivalent devices, if you claim equivalence or similar benchmark devices, you need to make sure that you did not identify any new risk. Also, another point is that you have to show that that your device is only used for the intended purpose in the intended target population, and that the safety and performance of this device is not going to change once it's going to be maybe exposed to a larger or more varied population. So the last point is then also that the PMS activities should be considered to provide sufficient clinical evidence data to really address any residual risk. So as you can see from all this very long list, it's quite difficult to show all these points. So therefore, I think it's rather possible for low risk medical devices here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. How are manufacturers in the EU managing multiple sources of information and updates to the CER and SSCP? For example, with information coming from the PMCF and PSURs on an annual basis, how are manufacturers best aligning these activities to update their technical documentation?
Yes, as I explained before, the PMCF is like a continuous process to update your clinical evaluation, and the results of the PMCF evaluation report is then also part of the summary safety and clinical performance document and the periodic safety update report. So when do you need to do this, or when do you have to update those documents? So for example, if you have a class 2B and class 3 device, you have to update both documents at least annually. Mm-hmm. If you then have a class 2A device, you need to update the periodic safety update report when it's necessary. So when does it become necessary? So if anything is coming up, it's going to change the benefit risk ratio of your device doing PMCF. You really have to do this. If nothing is coming up, you have to do it at least every 2 years. So we need to align all these activities and to update your technical documentation. The first step is really to understand all the needs from the different documents, starting from the clinical evaluation, PMCF, and the both documents mentioned before, to really fulfill all the MDR requirements. Then it's also crucial to understand that these documents are all linked to each other, and that the changes can affect your whole technical documentation. So, for example, if you need to have like changes in the wording, for example, for your intended purpose or an indication. So normally you have this part, for example, in your IFU, in the CP, CR, and risk management. So you really have to make sure that you update all the different documents. Then I would suggest first to start with a retrospective planning from the day on you want to submit to your notified body. With this, you can really see when you have to start, or more importantly, when you have to be finished with each document to really have a complete technical documentation. So as we all know, it's a lot of work right now to fulfill all the requirements. You really have to make sure that you have the appropriate staff in your company or in your team to really to be aligned with all the deadlines you have. So if you don't have them, of course, you have to. I hope you started already to recruit the right candidate. If this right now, it's not an option for you. of course, you can seek out to third parties to support you. You just have to keep in mind that an incomplete technical documentation submission will lead to a non-conformity. You will also lose time, of course, of this. And in the worst case, you can also lose your certificate if you don't meet the deadlines. Also, another option could be to use IT-based solutions for the organization of your technical documentation. This is quite helpful. As I said before, if you do some minor changes, it will help you to automatically update all the different parts and all the different documents of your technical documentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The next question is very long. I will read it slowly. This next question relates to sufficient clinical data for simple tool-like surgical class 1 instruments like knives, forceps, coagulation electrodes, and so on, with a very long history of clinical use and which are being used across a very wide range of indications and procedures. Hardly any clinical data from published studies exists for these kind of tools. Also, these instruments do not have any benefit on their own, but only through their use by trained surgeons. How much data are required per indication, and does the manufacturer need to specify indications at all if there's a universal intended purpose like cutting tissue? So this is a very specific question. I hope you can answer it.
I try my best. So it's indeed a very long question. So maybe I would like to first start to really explain what means sufficient clinical evidence data, because it's not explained in the MDR. So, but if you have a look at the MDCG guideline 2026, it says that it's understood as a present result of the qualified assessment, which has concluded that the device is safe and achieves its intended benefit. So from the question, they are talking about simple tool-like surgical class 1 instruments. So I think they can be identified as well as established technologies. So what are these devices? They are relatively simple, common and stable design with little evolution. They have well-known safety and they have not associated in the past with any safety issues. This is the same for the clinical performance. And they are like standard of care devices where there's little evolution in indication or overall the state of the art. Also, the last point to mention is here, they normally have a very long history on the market. So indeed, due to this fact, they are likely to be less likely to be subject of research. So sometimes in the literature you find very limited articles, or sometimes you don't find anything. So then in this case, it might be necessary then for the manufacturer to start PMCF as discussed before, to collect data on the safety and clinical performance of the device. So for these low-risk standard of care medical devices, then also belong to the well-established technologies, a lower level of clinical evidence may be justified to be sufficient to really to confirm with the relevant GSPRs. So what does it mean? So here I would like to highlight again the MDCG guideline 2026 and especially Appendix 3. This provides you like a ranking of clinical evidence you can use depending on your device. So for those devices, for example, you could use equivalence data if you claim equivalence. You can also use proactive PMS data like a survey, but you can also use simulated use animal or cadaveric testing involving healthcare professional or other end users. So in general, for the last part of the question, I would recommend not to specify any medical indication in the intended purpose of like a general use device. So by this, you just have to then demonstrate that your device can cut the tissue regardless of the indication during a surgical procedure. And by this, you can then use the clinical evidence level, as described before, to confirm the safety and performance of your device.
Okay, thank you. What kind of clinical investigation is necessary for a custom-made device with a new intended use indication that is placed on the market for the first time after the date of application of the MDR?
Thank you, Maria. So I will start by explaining what means custom-made device. which means any device specifically made in accordance with a written prescription of any person authorized by national law by virtue of that person's professional qualification, which gives under that person's responsibility specific design characteristics and is intended for the sole use of a particular patient exclusively to meet their individual condition and needs. So this we can find on the MDR Article 2, the MDCG 2021-3. So the relevant general safety and performance requirements set out in Annex 13 of the MDR apply to this kind of device. As such, clinical investigations may be undertaken with respect to this device type, and they may fall under Article 62. I can show you better on the schema. So you see you have several kinds of things. So you have the general requirement regarding clinical investigation conduct to demonstrate the conformity of the device. This they have to follow under 62. And you have Article 82 for the requirements regarding other clinical investigation. So you have two ways of doing things. So you have a scenario, and then you have the two ways, or Article 62 or Article 82. But what is the most important to know, it's that all custom-made devices follow the same regulation for clinical investigation as other medical device. Mm-hmm. So you can find details on this question and answer we discussed at the beginning, the MDCG 2021.6, and you have here the link.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, another different topic. For certain Class 3 medical devices that are not claiming equivalence and are not legacy devices under the MDR, it may be impossible for them to undergo clinical investigations because they are accessories to treatment, such as guide wire, catheter, or balloon for a coronary stent implant. How should manufacturers approach this situation?
Yes, so indeed the MDR provides some exceptions not to perform clinical investigations. So if you have an implantable device or a Class 3 device, you should perform a clinical investigation. However, if you have a device that has been designed by modification of a device already marketed by the same manufacturer, so just like an updated version, and this modified device has been demonstrated by the manufacturer to be equivalent to the previous version, and also the clinical evaluation of this market device is sufficient to demonstrate the conformity of the modified device with the relevant safety and performance requirements, you don't have to do this. Also, if you have a look at Article 61.6, so if you have an implantable device or a Class 3 device, and it's a legacy device, so this means it has an MDD certificate, and the clinical evaluation is based on sufficient clinical evidence data, you don't have to do a clinical investigation again. This is the same for suture, staples, or dental fillings, and so on. Also here, it's important to say that the clinical evaluation needs to have sufficient clinical evidence data. So from the question, it says that they are not claiming equivalence and it's not a legacy device. So I don't see right now the option not to perform a clinical investigation. So you really have to do them, although there's still an accessory to a treatment. So therefore, I would recommend to have a look at Article 61 for clinical evaluation, all the requirements. Also, you have to check that your clinical investigation are underperformed under Article 62 up to 80. Also have a look at Article 81, and especially all the requirements for clinical investigations all are described in Annex 15.
Thank you. For the next question, we are staying with Article 61. What kind of devices can make use of Article 61.10, and what is the consequence for what can then be claimed in marketing materials? What data remain essential to have when using Article 61.10?
So indeed, the manufacturer can refer to Article 6110 to justify why the demonstration of conformity with the GSPRs based on clinical data is not deemed appropriate. So you have to keep in mind that this article is not applicable to any Class 3 device or implantable device or any device with direct interaction with the human body and with a direct patient benefit. So in general, those devices do not typically make any clinical claims, because if the manufacturer of a medical device is stating a clinical claim, which is coming from the clinical performance of this device, which then leads to clinical benefit, you have to prove this clinical benefit by sufficient clinical evidence data. So by this, you cannot use anymore this Article 61.10. So for which device you can make use now of this Article 61.10? It's all non-Class 3 devices or implantable medical devices with indirect interaction with the human body, indirect benefit, and without any clinical claims being made. So if you have this device and you really want now to claim this, to use this article, you have to have an adequate justification, and this needs to be based on your risk management, the consideration of specifics of the interaction between the device and the human body, the intended clinical performance, and of course the claim stated. Mm-hmm. And then you have to demonstrate that, for example, the use of non-clinical testing methods alone, including performance evaluation or bench testing or any preclinical evaluation, is adequate for really to confirm the safety and performance of your device. A really important point is here that you should not just use it because there's a lack of clinical data of your device. So if you will do this, the notified body will definitely come back to you. So you only can really use it if it's not appropriate to have clinical data for your device. So however, even if you're can use this article, you still have to do a clinical evaluation. And so in the CR, you really have to show that you performed a systematic literature search and review. You also have to summarize, analyze, and appraise all non-clinical data to demonstrate that you have sufficient clinical evidence data to really show the safety and performance of your device. Also, you need to have compliance with performance standards or any other common specifications, if applicable, and that you have implemented an adequate PMS or vigilance activities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fantastic. What our audience is of course keen to know is if you can provide any tips and tricks on how claims can be formulated to be able to collect sufficient and useful clinical data to support the claims. Do you have any insider tips?
Yes, so I think first of all, it's very important to be to look at the definition of those words. First of all, what is clinical data? So these are all information concerning the safety and performance that is generated from the use of your device. And the clinical benefit means any positive impact of the device on the health of an individual expressed in terms of a meaningful, measurable, patient-related clinical outcome. So the first step I would suggest to really perform a literature search on the current state of the art, including similar benchmark devices or equivalent device. If you claim equivalence, always, of course, and really to identify safety and performance outcome parameters. Then you can also check for any industrial standard guidance or any other consensus documents in the first place.
Yes, for sure. What I can add to what Marius said, it's that based on all that, the claim should be able to demonstrate the clinical benefits of a medical device for the intended population with measurable endpoints. So during the planning phase of a study, a discussion with the health practitioner could help in the endpoint definition. The endpoints must be clinically relevant and measurable in the intended population. This could be done at the preclinical stage of development of a medical device, and also in the preparation of a PMCF studies. Also, as I highlighted here, we need to look on the number of patients, we need to collect data, and for that, we need to work closely with statisticians, look at the different claims, if we can group them together to optimize the number of patients. Also, of course, as just said, with advertising and promotion documents on the different websites and social media, everything must be verifiable and evidenced by sufficient clinical data. Mm-hmm. What you need also to know is that some notified body requires, as just said, measurable and quantified medical claims. And in this case, one of the tips is to look at the complication rate as an example, if it's less than 5% and improves the patient's health in over 95% of the cases, it's like that you limit your number of patients you want to collect data. Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah. So, and of course, we are very, if we really need the literature search, which is very useful to define the threshold of the endpoint by defining the appropriate threshold. And in all cases, the threshold is intimately related to the claim definition. That's why it's so important, and I leave to Marius to give you more details on that.
Yes, I have a very specific question regarding literature search. What is the best way to choose good search terms for literature search?
Yes, so we're talking a lot about the literature search now. So basically I want to first highlight that the clinical evaluation needs, so in this clinical evaluation, you need to identify all available clinical relevant data to your device and its intended purpose, and any gaps in the clinical evidence through a systematic scientific literature review. So at the moment, the MDR does not really gives you like a help or guidance really how to do the literature search. So you can still use the MEDEV document. And if you look at this, it will suggest you different databases you can use, first of all. So Medline, PubMed, I think is the most prominent one, and then Embase or Cochrane on the Cochrane database, or any other international trial, clinical trial registry platform. Not mentioned in the MEDEV, but I think it's also a very powerful tool is to use Google Scholar to use for articles. Mm-hmm. So you have to have an objective, non-biased systematic search and review. And the MEDEV provides you different options, methods you can use. So here I would like to focus and highlight the PICO method. So PICO stands for the patient characteristic, the type of intervention, then the control and comparator, and the outcome. So based off this, you need to construct 4 different search terms focusing on different aspects. So the first aspect is here to focus on the patient. So the question is here, what is currently known about patients undergoing the treatment with your medical device? So here it's important to compare to the IFU concerning the age, the gender or medical condition for what the device is going to be used. Then the next step is to create a search term focusing on the intervention or to describe the interventional procedure with the medical device. Then in the next step, you need to focus on alternative treatment options. So you really have to show that like, for example, you have no treatment or other standard therapy method here. The last point would be also discussed earlier is about the to create search terms to identify safety and performance endpoints or outcomes. So what are these outcomes? For example, the mortality rate, it can be also device failure rate, procedure success, and so on. So I would also like to highlight here to use the MeSH database, which is used for indexing articles in PubMed to identify specific synonyms in the field of the medicine you're looking for, because sometimes they use different expressions for the same medical condition. As I said before, I think it's a good way to have an own document to create your search plan and to build the search terms concerning the different question I just highlighted before. Then, of course, you can use different operators. You can use double quotation marks, one-word phrases, and so on. There's also the option to use field tags. If you're looking for a specific word, for example, in the text of the article, or rather in the title or abstract. So once you have these search terms, add them to the database, and then try to change maybe the keywords to exclude irrelevant articles in the first place. So here really is the aim to have a manageable amount of articles for the selection process. And then you can also make use of these filters. For example, you can restrict or extend your results. So for an example, so if you're focusing right now on the state of the art, depending on your medical device, 5 to 10 years, it's sufficient. And then I would also recommend you to start really with high quality articles like a systematic review, meta-analysis, or any randomized controlled clinical trial to really have a good search term.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, what role can registries have in the collection of post-market data? And how could these registries be set up in a pragmatic way that enables manufacturers to use the existing data? Michaela, do you want to answer this one?
Thank you. Yes, registries for manufacturer, it's like caviar, you know, because it's if you had this this facilitate your life. So if I can look at the definition, you know, a registry is an organized system that uses observational study methods to collect uniform data, clinical and other, to evaluate specified outcomes for a population defined by a particular disease, condition or exposure, and that serves a predetermined scientific, clinical, or policy purpose, based, of course, on the European Medicine Agency's definition of a registry. The data may come from many different sources: outpatients clinical record, inpatient hospital records, laboratory records, billing records. Due to the long-term data collection, the roles of registries in data collection are multiple. Indeed, registry can provide strong evidence for the extent to which medical interventions achieve health improvements in real practice settings, in contrary to clinical trials. Also, the number of patients lost of follow-up is really low compared to clinical trials. Moreover, a registry provides complementary data to that obtained from trials, and are an increasingly important tool in safety surveillance. So integrating clinical trials may offer opportunity to avoid duplicate data collection, identify and recruit patients more efficiently, of course, reduce time to database lock, and accelerate time to critical decision making, and, by the way, reducing clinical trial cost. Well, less time, more effective, so yes. It's less consuming. The other point is that the implementation of a registry study is not very different from a clinical study. All the basic elements of project design, planning, and management are employed, and also we write the study report on the same way. So yeah. So the quality registry starts with a good protocol and can be summarized in several points. As I said earlier, if you are looking, sometimes you need recommendation, so don't hesitate to contact the notified body and submit your plan. Like that, they can help you to correct it and to adjust it. Clearly articulate the concept of a registry in a transparent manner. Define and describe participant characteristics. Of course, select clinically relevant data elements. Data collection processes must be systematic, consistent, reproducible, and reliable. Assure the registry conforms to informatics standards. Evaluate and assure data quality across multiple dimensions. Patient protection must be assured at any time, and the sure registry design is valid across multiple stakeholder analysis, as just said.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find more details on the reference we just add here.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Okay, I think we have only two questions left. What role can insurance data play in the field of clinical data?
Yes, so insurers and intermediary had a lot of how to say, they possess, of course, a vast amount of data, but they are linked to multiple legacy system and database. It's not easy to have access. It's very country specific. It may take time. Also, you need to use a specific computer and machine protected to avoid having that transfer in other parts. The insurance data set help build more efficient clinical trials. So of course you have all grouped together, so you have a fast access compared to clinical data collection. Also, you can if this gives you an idea at a country level population or at the European level population, and then you can be more specific on having your the patient you look on details, so you can limit the number of patients you have on the trial. It gives an idea, and you can collect only on space, yes, to limit the number of patients you may control. But also one very interesting point with insurance data, you may have a meta-analysis and look, this will give you also details. Of course, you can adjust your sample size of a trial and reduce it, but also this helps you to give a line with a medical device you have to follow. And you can see if some items are different from one country to another on the logistic, or also on the exams the patient may have before or after they receive this medical device. As an example, in some country, it's recommended to have a scan before and after you put a pacemaker, okay? In some countries, you don't need it. They just do an echography to look at or nothing. So this helps to also to optimize the cost of day-to-day patient logistic in an hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
last question. With an increasing number of devices offering artificial intelligence features, what are the most important aspects of clinical data validation steps for manufacturers to consider for these devices in the absence of any legislation?
Yes, thanks for this question. This is a very challenging question. It can take more than 2 hours to look at it. So perhaps it can be a subject of an article in the near future. So, you know, some devices are offering artificial intelligence feature are included, we call it in the medical device software. So MDSW, and covered by the EU MDR 2017-7452. As per Article 2 of the MDR definition 19, it's well explained that it is necessary to clarify that software in its own right, when specifically intended by the manufacturer to be used for one or more of the medical purposes set out in the definition of a medical device, qualifies as a medical device, while software for general purposes, even when used in a healthcare setting, or software intended for lifestyle and well-being purposes is not a medical device. The qualification of software, either as a device or an accessory, is independent of the software's location or the type of interconnection between the software and the device. Like that, it's really indigest. Okay, so curious.
No caviar.
No, not caviar at all. And you know, the other point is that software can be classified class 1, class 2A, class 2B, class 3, or accessory. Okay, so it can be, it's a nightmare for everybody. So I put at the end the different classes like that, but we'll give you some details. So generally, software in V1 who intended to provide information which is used to take decision with diagnosis or therapeutic purpose is classified as a class 2A, okay? Except if such a decision have an impact that may cause death or an irreversible deterioration of a person's state of health, in which case it is class 3, okay? Or a serious deterioration of a person's state of health or a surgical intervention, in which case it's classified a class 2B. So you see the limit between class 2A, 2B and class 3, it's very thin and not easy to be taken. Of course, the software intended to monitor physiological processes is classified as a class 2A. If we have to monitor vital physiological parameters, and this varies sometimes, and they can put in danger a patient, in this case, it's classified class 2B. All other software are classified at class 1. As an example, if you need to know the number of impulse, cardiac impulse you have, it's a class 1. Okay? So clearly, all manufacturers can be supported, of course, by the MDCG 2019-11, the guidance of qualification and classification of software in regulation. But it's not easy to pass from one to the other. Of course, everybody would like to be class 1, class 2A, class 2B, because you can imagine class 3, you need to prove that everything is all right every year, which is a mess, because to prove that every year everything is all right, it's really very difficult.
Yeah.
So, and then the legislation is changing quite often. So I will give you here some example. Okay, so clearly spoken, MDS, so medical device software, they can be used alone or in combination. As an example, if you look at how for the insulin pump, which are to administrate and calculate the dosage of insulin, and this has a delivery system. It's classified class 2B, and if you it's taking it's not easy. The melanoma image analysis software. It's a combination of near infrared laser light scanner. This one, it's 2A. So then you have another one. Software may be qualified as medical device software, regardless their location. It can be operating from a cloud. Have a look at pacemaker. They are linked to a small, like a little phone, and this one it's linked to the cloud of the hospital and gives it's linked to the computer of the doctor. So if they see that you have an issue, in this case, they call you back home. Okay, and in this case, it's it's a point of care test from a remote location. So also it's 2B or 3. Then you have other kind of things. It's like you have, it can help also the healthcare professional, and it gives you a recommendation on, when you look at the results, recommendation on the dose, regardless to patient, which can be, and they prescribe the dose, whatever, via an insulin pump, insulin pen, or insulin syringe. In this case, it's a class 3, and why? It's because this has an impact. You may go on a coma if you don't have enough insulin. So it's not easy at all how to classify. So here you have a table extracted from the guidance on qualification and classification of software regulation, which explain you exactly how it may be. You know, you have a critical situation or patient condition, high threat or diagnosis. It's what I just said, class 3 for the insulin when you see the high level. Okay. Then on medium, you have several ways. So you can be class 2B if you are critical and medium, drives clinical management, or you can, if it's high and serious situation or patient condition. Then on class 2A, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 way to be, you see. So by the end, it's not easy at all, okay? How to pass from a serious situation to critical situation, it's a big discussion with notified body and also with manufacturer. So you see, not easy at all.
We might take you up on your offer to write an article about it, I think.
Yes, we'll write with my colleague an article and give more samples and going into details and to explain this.
Okay. I think we're through with our questions. So you have been wonderful guests. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, Michaela and Marius. This was really very insightful and provides a lot of practical advice too. So I think our audiences will appreciate that. Your presentation, so the slides will be first released exclusively to our subscribers who sent us their question, and will later on become available publicly alongside the audio and video file for download from our website, Global Regulatory Press, in case anybody needs to come back to check some of the information. So thank you for listening, and thank you again, Michaela and Marius, for being with us today.
Thank you, Maria. If anybody has any question, of course, you can contact us on the address you have here. It will be a pleasure to answer you with Marius.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.